And thanks for joining me for this special edition of Hannity Tonight. For the full hour, it is the interview that you've all been waiting for. And joining me now for her very first cable interview since the release of a brand new book, the author of Going Rogue in American Life, the former governor of the great state of Alaska, Governor Sarah Palin. Governor, how are you?
Thank you so much for letting me be here.
Well, we appreciate it. All right, so we got the full hour, so I'm not going to start with issues, because this is really a biography of your life up till now. Fair characterization?
It's a compilation of lots of journals from when I was a little girl until where I am today.
All right. Now, because some of this kind of shocked me as I was going through the book, you know, and maybe it describes why maybe some people have negative feelings towards Governor Palin, and we'll talk about that in a minute. You write, for example, you went hunting with your father before school one day.
Many days we
went
hunting.
Many days?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I looked down to see the moose's eyeballs lying in the palm, in his palm, still warm from the critter's head. But when he saw the wrinkle in my nose and the shake of my head slightly, he set him aside. He realized that even though he'd raised me to be a hunting buddy, I had my limits.
Yeah, things like that have just been a part of my upbringing, a part of that real life that is Alaska. It's kind of a rugged lifestyle up there. Things like that aren't uncommon, and my dad is a science teacher with his elementary students. He wanted to kill two birds with one stone that day, being able to fill the family's freezer and bring in specimens so his students can see what an animal is made of.
Well, that's for a young girl. I don't know what I would do if my father was holding, you know, warm eyeballs of a moose.
An event like that or an activity like that really helped shape me, being out there hunting, being out there very active, very much a lover of our outdoors and our clean environment up there, and respecting the wildlife up there. It helped shape a lot of my political positions.
You talk a lot about your personal life too. You talk about Todd and your relationship with him. You guys were dating at a pretty young age. Mm-hmm. And you tell the story in the book that you weren't allowed to use the phone, so you would communicate on what, radios? On
VHF, yeah, on our back porches. We live 5 miles away, and he took his radios off his commercial fishing vessel, and that's how we would communicate way back in the day.
And then you discovered that truckers were listening in.
Yeah, we did. They'd be barreling through town, and the truckers could hear what we were saying, so that put a stop to those midnight chats.
I would think that might. Yeah. Anything that might be recorded by the trucker as he goes along. Right. And then also, a lot of people don't know, you eloped. How old were you when you eloped?
23, and yeah, we were broke, didn't want to spend any money that we didn't have, always quite frugal, and just surprised our parents and our friends and family, then had a big reception afterwards.
A big reception at Wendy's?
Well, yeah, that was the first reception, I guess, and then our parents threw us a nice reception.
All right, but to get, I guess, witnesses for the wedding, you went to an old folks' home and got 2 elderly people, and you walked them across the street for the wedding.
We did. We went to the Alaska Pioneers home that was across the street from the courthouse, and we looked for some who maybe wouldn't be in a wheelchair, who could walk across the street with us and see us into this life of matrimony.
And you have your $30 ring?
$35.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
I misread a $35 ring. Well, it's a pretty interesting story, but you tell your mom about it. She broke down crying.
Yeah, yeah. As I would too. I tell my kids, heaven forbid you ever do what I did with eloping. I want my kids to have a real wedding and have you know, a pastor being able to bless them and their state of matrimony, all those traditional things that Todd and we didn't really care about at the time, and because we didn't have a whole lot of money, we just wanted to quit being apart, and we had been thousands of miles apart for many years. Since he was 16 and I was 17 when we met and first started dating, we decided, you know, no more months and months apart. We're going to get married, and we're going to forge this life as one, and, you know, it's been an absolute awesome ride ever since.
All right, now how did your husband respond to the part of the book when you described when he first tried to kiss you? And I'm not getting, but you wrote about it, right. And you ran away. Yeah. And then he told all his friends about it.
Yeah, and as I say in the book too, you know, it's a lesson there that even the good guys can sometimes act like jerks, which I thought he did because he told our friends about it. Yeah.
And how did he react to that part of being in the book?
He says, hey, you could have written a lot of worse things than that. So.
Yeah. All right, you could walk through the very difficult story when you when you talk about your youngest son, Trig.
Yes.
And when you discovered he'd be a special needs child. It's pretty heart-wrenching that what you described there.
I think there are so many parents in America who face what I faced and Todd faced, and that was some surprising news that not everything was going to be quote unquote normal or perfect with the pregnancy and with the child. But what I describe in the book is the process that I went through of through a lot of prayer, finally being to a point of accepting that Trig was going to be a gift from God. And my prayer certainly was answered the moment he was born, and I saw him and realized, oh my gosh, God knows what he's doing. He knew that Trig would be a perfect fit in our family.
But there was a period of time where you didn't have a chance to tell your husband about this.
Yeah.
And there was a pretty extended period of time. So you were living with this, and then you told him. Tell us how that, you describe it in the book.
Right. That was a rough couple of weeks, about 3 weeks, when Todd and I were physically apart, and I didn't want to tell him over the phone that our child would have Down syndrome. I wanted to be able to sit down with him and look him in the eyes, and finally when we were together and I was able to tell him, Todd had such great perspective and a great attitude about it, and probably a better reaction to the news than I did at first, where he was quite accepting and reassuring me that everything was going to be okay, and truly that is certainly what has happened. Everything has been okay.
And one of the things he said to you, I guess the question came up, why us? And his answer back to you was, why not us?
Exactly.
What is that? That's a pretty interesting response to me.
Todd has that perspective, and I learned from him. It's so helpful and helpful too, that perspective in this arena of politics, which can get quite ugly and brutal. Yeah. And yet Todd and my kids remind me so often of what really matters, and keeping me grounded and keeping me focused on what really matters in our country. It makes things a bit easier to get through.
One last family issue, and then we'll get into, I want to get into some really substantive issues and what you think about the president and what you think about the campaign. When it came out, for example, you write about the vetting process, and they knew when they were vetting you that your daughter was pregnant.
Right.
Do you wonder how they found out about that, number one? And how did you react? You describe how you reacted when you found out your younger daughter was pregnant.
Right. Well, when they found out that Bristol, and she was 17, that she was pregnant, and the McCain operatives in the campaign had done their homework, they knew all about us. They knew what they were getting when they chose me.
But that made you comfortable. You were glad that they knew.
Very comfortable. Knew, again, because it was reassuring. It was good. There aren't going to be any surprises. You guys know what you're getting. You're getting a very colorful, full family, too, along with me. But I was very surprised that the campaign wasn't ready to react then to that circumstance. And the circumstance was a teen who is pregnant and unmarried. Well, that's a challenge. It's not something to glamorize and to strive to emulate by other girls. I certainly didn't want a message sent that it was okay and that it was something that we were giddy happy about. In fact, Todd and I had great concerns. Bristol, she was embarrassed. She was quite concerned about the challenges ahead. And the campaign kind of reacted to it in a way that I thought, this isn't the message that we want to send initially. So we had a little bit of, right off the bat, some discussion on what I would be able to say and articulate to the public.
And you rewrote this statement, but then you found out on the news that it was already released.
Right.
And that disappointed you.
It disappointed me because it was a, very personal issue, and yet we had an opportunity there to send that message right out of the chute, the right message about the problem of teen pregnancy in our country.
Last question on this. You mentioned the book. It kind of surprised me where you said you realized the thought process of somebody who would consider an abortion. Explain that.
I did. For that fleeting moment, I certainly understood, one, when I found out I was pregnant, and I was 43 years old, I know, spring chicken, and realizing
You're still
that...
younger than me, Governor, right?
Well, just realizing for that fleeting moment, well, nobody knew about it. I knew that the critics were going to just come out of the woodwork and just have a heyday with this, a pregnant governor, the first female governor of Alaska, and they would use, I feared, my pregnancy as an excuse to distract, and thought for a moment, okay, these are less than ideal circumstances, and this perhaps is why a woman would feel that it's an easy thing to just do away with the problem. But holding on to that seed of faith at that time, knowing that, no, I have to remember, I have to believe that there is purpose in every innocent life, in every baby's life. And then having, though, to hold on to that seed of faith again, when I found out some weeks later that Trig would have Down syndrome, realizing too, okay, my first thought was, these are less than ideal circumstances. How should I react to that? And understanding for that moment too, why a woman would believe that perhaps it's easier to just do away with a perceived problem and pretend maybe like it never happened. Very, very thankful, of course, that I made the decision to give birth to Trig.
We've got to take a break. We'll come back, and I'm never going hunting with your father, ever. We'll come back. We'll have more with Sarah Palin right after the break.